So before we get into the subject of today's video, tonight 9:30 PM GMT over on the Cthulhu-Kin and Friends show, I will be hosting a political recap stream with TrupsLP. No doubt the extension to Article 50 is going to crop up, and I think also Chicago suing Jussie Smollett. Link below. Now the subject we are going to cover confuses me a little, and I'm going to provide a little backstory for why I'm covering it in the first place. Yesterday, in the comments to the video, I received a tip requesting I go to something called Save James. There is a petition involved, and the petition I thought at first was a Poe. In fact, I thought the whole thing was a Poe because, quite frankly, it was too ludicrous to be real. I mean, what parent would want to willingly, knowingly reassign the gender or chemically castrate their child because they want a girl, or they believe their son should be a daughter? I don't like this notion that people get to play God and their children are the pawns. After some digging, I found a few sources, but not many, which is why my belief it was a Poe stood. So I reached out to some people who I know are in Texas, and they managed to confirm it. It is in fact real. A mother is trying to chemically castrate her child to socially transition and then actually transition to be a girl. What? So the first thing I found after finding the petition was a video on Facebook, and I'm going to play it because it's an interview the father, while he's busy fighting for custody of his child, did on radio, and there are a couple comments he makes in that video that are really, really telling.
I want you to imagine having electronic communication with your son on FaceTime. And imagine that your ex-wife has dressed him as a drag queen to talk to you. He has false eyelashes and makeup. His hair's got glitter in it. He's wearing a dress. Now, imagine how you would feel seeing what I believe is actual sexual abuse. I believe this is not just emotional abuse, but is the very most fundamental form of sexual abuse, tampering with the sexual identity of a vulnerable boy. Every single day, you have to see your son sexually abused, and you have to maintain your calm. You have to be the one who's calm, because the courts are not going to be fair to you. And the only way you can survive this and get your son through this alive is to calmly allow your son to be tortured right before your eyes and outlast the opposition. That's what it's like.
The glaring comment that Jeff made was how utterly biased the courts are. The way he addressed how fathers are treated in courts is a damning statement for how unfair and unequal society is when it comes to parental custody. To give a little insanity backstory, the mother started renaming her son James Luna at the age of 3 and dressing him in dresses. Now, I don't really take issue with what kids wear, but it's when you start to push towards a transition when they're not even old enough to make any kind of decision for themselves. You start to what most would call brainwash them into thinking, yes, that is what they want. Now, I get it, some kids in certain circumstances, because there's going to be one retard in the comments telling me, oh, education's biased and brainwashing and religion is brainwashed and biased. I know. Context, though, matters. Education is important, as is making an informed decision, which normally comes from education. Hard to be educated if your parents are force-feeding something into you. The job of a parent, by the way, is to protect you, to raise you, not to brainwash you, to show you what is right and wrong, make sure you have a solid moral compass, and you are the very best version of you to live a good and fulfilling life. Now, okay, that doesn't actually work for the majority of people. I have no doubt the majority of people here have daddy issues of some kind, but I do believe the majority of you get the point. What the father said in his interview is how what the mother is doing is a form of sexual abuse. And that's quite an interesting way of phrasing it, because I kind of get it, in the sense that she is taking his biological sex and abusing it because it's not what she wanted. She's changing it. She is denigrating, breaking down, and making him into something he isn't. He might well be in the future. To be clear, there is still a possibility James may grow up and transition regardless, but it should not be the design of the parent. It should be something that is not necessarily naturally occurring, but something that happens as the child grows older and comes to terms with one's identity, then that can be treated, and of course, that path can be taken. So to add more to the story, because it really confuses me why a mother would do this, the father is losing the right, potentially going to lose it entirely, because he refuses to agree with his ex-wife that his boy is transgender. Anne, the mother, is a pediatrician and claims in a petition that she is seeking to terminate the parental rights of her estranged husband, Jeffrey, that their son is a transgender child and by choice now goes by the name Luna, and is only known by her classmates as a girl, which they don't. The classmates and the parents of those classmates don't know at the all-girls school that James is in fact male. That of course raises questions about whether or not transgender kids could be there, but I would argue at the age of 6, that's not really something one should be pursuing in any sense of the imagination. I have had somebody in the past who is trans critique the sources I used because the sources came from a religious background. However, the information on that page was accurate, so it didn't matter where it came from. I don't care to character assassinate somebody just because the source may be a bit questionable. If the source is correct, it doesn't truly matter. And I would argue, children, no child, should be put on any kind of puberty blocker, go through any kind of hormone replacement therapy or chemical castration. None of them. Those organs are still developing. Why the fuck would you want to kill your child's future because of what you believe? Naturally, this is quite a sensitive case, and there isn't much information on this case. I am a tad curious why this case hasn't received wider publicity. Because of the nature of it, it does spark quite intense debates. The courts, in their remarkably progressive way, have enjoined Jeff from dressing James as a boy at school, from teaching him that he is a boy, and from sharing religious studies on sexuality and gender, and he has been accused of abuse for saying that his son is a boy. James has a twin brother called Jude. I'm a tad curious to see how the mother is dealing with Jude as well in this. Or does she just want a boy and a girl? Or has she decided because maybe James likes pink, that means he's a girl? By the way, being a pediatrician doesn't make you an expert on kids' gender. And I still maintain, if a kid wants to explore that, they must do it naturally and not have it imposed upon them. You, the parent, are, by definition, abusing your child the moment you push down this path, not the social transitioning path. That is a different argument. I'm referring to the chemical castration that can happen, or start to happen, at the age of 8. I can't personally tolerate that. I think this is... Actually, it is a form of sexual abuse. The father is quite right. Oh dear. Now, because the court prohibits the dad from addressing James as a boy, and other references, the dad pointed out in the court that when James is presented with male and female clothing options, James always chooses and insists on his boy clothes, which is a damning statement about while the mother might think she knows best because of that old-fashioned idiom, she is wrong. Her son wants to be a son, and one should not force gender dysphoria onto a kid. A former transgender individual called Walter Heyer, who eventually rejected his female alter persona, as it's written in an article that I've linked below, I'm not saying that as a statement from myself, has said that the diagnosis is critical because labelling a child with gender dysphoria can trigger a series of physical and mental consequences for the child and has legal ramifications in the ongoing custody case. Get it wrong, and young James's life is irrevocably harmed, which is why I fully support treating children as children until they are old enough to make an informed decision for themselves. You can try and be subtle, by the way, but kids are remarkably good at noticing the obvious. It's somewhat similar to that saying where people who are experts in a field can't see the obvious because their mind is so filled with the complex they don't see, for example, Occam's razor. Kids will always see the obvious, so they'll notice it when people try and be subtle and manipulate them. They won't know what manipulation is, but they know when someone's trying to use them. And I'll be honest, I am a tad surprised that this court in Texas is allowing this joke to continue because what it sounds like is abuse. And I would argue that the father, Jeffrey Younger, should be given the custodial rights to his children. Because Anne, the pediatrician, who is totally an expert on kids' genders and should totally be pushing for her son to be chemically castrated or start on that path at the age of 8 in 2 years' time, should be blackballed. But that's just me. I can understand why moral outrage would exist in this case because it does reek of, it reeks of wrong. I know there are a lot of people who think that kids should be pushed down this path, but I'm going to be consistent. much like the parents of Desmond is Amazing should learn to grow up and let their son be a son as opposed to a martyr for the LGBTQIAPP+ whatever alphabet community. I maintain that Anne in this case. Now I don't know the specifics of their breakup or anything else because it's not mentioned, but what we know is that the father is footing the bill for counselling, footing the bill for hormone treatments. He is footing the bill for something that he does not want his son to have imposed upon him, which is what is being done by somebody who thinks they know best. Kids should not be the plaything for somebody who wants their child to be an accessory. Anyway, I hope you all have a lovely Friday, and if I don't see you tonight over on the Cthulhu-Kin and Friends show, a lovely weekend, and thank you all for listening.